Salutations everybody, it is Maddie here today. I'm at a absolutely cursed setup. Y'all have no idea what's been going on behind the scenes. I've been trying to get videos going all day and it is failing me, which is the worst thing to be happening when you are on the road. Because yes, this is not my usual setup and I'm running on like 3 hours of sleep, but we gotta talk about what's going on with Xbox here. You know, duty calls. We just had opening night live yesterday. Normally after a showcase like that, I'm breaking down all the announcements, but I emphatically mean this when I say I was looking at the list, I took my notes because I watched the showcase on the plane. I was like, I have nothing to say about 80% of these games because they were such nothing trailers. Like even games I really am excited for, like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, it's like it's the same thing I've seen from the game for the last 4 trailers. Like if you got nothing new to say, don't show up at all, right? But Xbox showed up in a big way, and as someone who covers Xbox frequently, one thing that is worth noting is that they asked you to show up. They're like, hey, if you want updates on Xbox games, this is the place to be. And they showed up in a big way. We're gonna talk about all of their announcements. Starfield, Indiana Jones being a very hot topic. We're gonna talk about Towerborne, Our History Untold had a new trailer. Xbox had a really strong presence at this Gamescom. They did mark it as their biggest Gamescom ever, so it makes sense. And if you've been watching a lot of the coverage leading into Gamescom, you know that we were expecting a lot of Xbox stuff here. Unfortunately, none of us were really expecting like an absolute tragedy online in specifically what's going on with Indiana Jones, where many of us anticipated this, but with how fast things are accelerating at Xbox right now, that announcement that we're gonna talk about paints a very clear picture of where this company is headed. So ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to say about Xbox right now, and I thought I'd sit down and just have a little conversation here in my dry fit Knicks tee and like 3 hours of sleep under my belt and see if I can put together something coherent. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for bearing with me with this kind of setup. And we'll be back to our usual stuff soon. But ladies and gentlemen, let's open things up. There was some good stuff. I want to talk about Starfield. Starfield, we got our hands on the brand new update. I have yet to test it out where the Rev 8 has now been added into the game. And so now you can drive around all these planets and it looks really cool. There's more customization. There's a turret. I thought this looked really good. And on top of that, we actually got a release date for Shattered Space, which was anticipated. I've been saying in a lot of our Starfield videos, like, yeah, this is most definitely going to arrive at Gamescom, and it did. The one thing I was wrong about though, is I thought it was gonna arrive, you know, around the 1-year anniversary of Starfield's release date, September 1st, but it's coming out September 30th, like right on the tail end of September, putting itself right in the heat of October, which for a game trying to, in my opinion at least, make a bit of a clapback, make a little bit of a comeback, you know, like state its mission purpose moving forward, reignite the base. I don't think this is a great time for it to be releasing. It's gonna be kind of lost in the sauce with other big games that are coming out that people haven't played yet. DLC historically, unless you're like from software, struggles a little bit, right? So I do worry about that from like the level of can BGS win back people with Shattered Space? We'll see if it's good enough. I think it'll make its noise, but time will tell on that. I'm still excited to dive in, and I thought the new trailer looked really good. That's where I would draw the line at what I think is really good about this showcase on the Xbox front, because like Starfield is kind of just in unmuddied waters as it stands right now. When it comes to something like Towerborne or Indiana Jones, it gets a lot more complicated there. That's where the conversation really evolves. It starts off with Towerborne, which isn't in a bad spot at all. To make it clear, like all these games look amazing. It's just if you're looking at it optically, some of the decision making at Xbox paints a very clear picture of where their business is heading, which I think multi-platform can be fine, but I think it's happening at such a rapid rate that even games like Indiana Jones aren't giving themselves enough time to see how they just do exclusively on Xbox before leaping off the platform in general. And so it clearly sends a message of like, people aren't gonna buy this, or we don't think this is gonna generate enough sales, or we want it to be completely multi-plat off the get-go. And so right now, Xbox fans are left with one thing, and that's value proposition, and I guess a second thing in timed exclusivity. But we'll get to Indiana Jones in a second, because that's the one I have the most to say. When it comes to Towerborne, this game looks awesome. It's coming from Stoic, and this is the team that brought us Banner Saga. It's been marketed heavily as an Xbox exclusive, right? This is a game that's coming from this indie team, trying something different. You know, they've made all these different tactical, turn-based, choice-focused RPGs, and they're all amazing, by the way. If you have yet to check them out, you should. But when you have Towerborne showing up, it reminds me a lot of like Dragon's Crown, to give a more obscure example. And so I'm really excited about it, but it was marketed as an Xbox exclusive. It was announced as one. And it was definitely coming to PC because that's kind of synonymous with what Xbox is doing, right? So when they announced like, hey, we're doing early access, it's like, okay, I thought this would be like a 1.0 full release, but okay, I can get down with early access, especially look at something like Hades and you see just how great that's doing in early access, and you realize like some early access games are more feature complete and content complete than AAA games releasing with like a massive budget. But I digress. It's releasing on Steam only. And this is strange because Xbox does have a really good early access program in game preview. I think of something like Grounded, for example, which launched in game preview. Like Xbox could have totally done this from my point of view, but they didn't. And so right there, I think that's a little bit of an optical L in that you've marketed this thing so much for your platform and now it's going somewhere else. Especially a game like this, it's a 4-player action RPG co-op. That's something you want to play with friends, especially you want Game Pass involved. And so it's not the end of the world, I would say, but it kind of starts to signify something. And then I think the final nail in the coffin arrives with something like Indiana Jones. So let's stop beating around the bush. Now that we've kind of built up to it properly, let's get right into it. So Indiana Jones and the Great Circle finally gets a release date. It's been long rumored, like when's it dropping? And it's coming December 9th this year. A little late in the year, a little surprised by that, but there's a lot of great looking December games. You got this one, it was announced during opening night live as well. You have Marvel Rivals. It's like, okay, like we got some good December stuff to kind of close out the year. And people are starting to not really care about showing up at the Game Awards and just dropping a game toward the end of the year. It's kind of cool when you think about it. I would have loved to see Indy kind of be in the contending spot. But anyway, it gets a release date, and then Jeff Keighley hits us with like, we got just one more thing. And me on the plane, I'm sitting there looking at my phone like, oh, no way. Are they about to do Wolfenstein 3? It's so funny how wrong I was, by the way. I'm thinking Wolfenstein 3. Like, why would they tease that? I don't know. But it didn't really cross my mind what they were about to do. And I was like, wait a second. Like, there's no way they... And then they announce it. Spring 2025, PlayStation. Now, I'm of two minds of this. Firstly, this was expected. This was a known quantity for sure. Now, there is a asterisk next to that, which I will get into in what Phil Spencer said. But this was, if you've been paying attention to Xbox and their moves and their back and forth flip-floppy nature, this was expected. When we saw 4 games leave the platform and Phil and co were just like, it's just those 4, we knew clear as day it would not just be those 4. There would be more on the way. Now, where things get very annoying is that, again, the executives are lying to us, right? And so Phil Spencer is directly asked about Starfield and Indiana Jones. And what do you think he does? He says, no, it's not gonna be those. So it's either one of two things here. One, Phil is a complete liar and has no problem putting on a good face for you, but then lying to you so that you'll continue to buy the systems. Or two, that this is what was going on internally at the time, and he's gradually having control usurped from him. Because this doesn't feel like the vision of Xbox from Phil, Matt, and Sarah. This doesn't feel like that. This kind of move where you're kind of cutting out an exclusive before it has a chance to even sell screams of like, we just want to do what's financially sensible. And that's multi-platform for Xbox. It reminds me a lot of Sega and the Dreamcast. Like, imagine if Sega was sitting there telling you like, hey, we're gonna still be doing the Dreamcast, we're still here to support this console, but they were releasing games on the Xbox, GameCube, and PS2, right? You'd start to scratch your head a bit, and that's what Xbox is doing. I'll put it this way. I expect these gaming executives to lie to us frequently, especially in the case of Xbox. They've just been caught so many times with their pants down, to put it bluntly. Like, there's been so many times that they've been walking back on their words. But what I'll also say is that I feel sad watching this happen, because that Indiana Jones announcement, while expected, many of us, I think rightfully so, anticipated Xbox fans are gonna get it first. Like, that's just how it's gonna go. But the business is changing before our eyes. And in the case of Xbox, it feels like we really are watching one of the last generations go on. And it's so strange because they're committing to like, we're gonna do more hardware, and it seems like they're really gonna do it, but I don't know how you commit to that so hard and state you're gonna be there, but then do moves that convince people so frequently that your box isn't worth it for them. And I don't even think it's just by looking at moves like this, like it's Xbox's own verbiage. We've talked about ads in the past on Defining Duke, like no console required. When they've announced games for Xbox here on this stage at Opening Night Live, like when they talked about Sniper Elite Resistance being day one on Game Pass and coming to Xbox, they never mentioned the Xbox console. They say coming to Game Pass and PC. That's a totally different set of wording. It's removing Xbox and what it is from the scenario completely, and it's by design. And so things like this, where you see Indiana Jones before it even goes out exclusively to Xbox fans and turns into just a value proposition, which is still something, but it's much different from what people were anticipating, and it's happening way sooner. It's what I've said before, is that this is going to happen quicker, and it's because it's assumed there's a bit of an internal battle over at Xbox between what direction they should go in. There was the traditional way of doing business, and I think where Xbox is going could be going where the whole industry is going. It's just that Xbox feels so entirely ahead of the pack. Same thing with like online only and DRM stuff, like things that are pretty regular in games nowadays. When they tried to do it during the Xbox One era and went hard in that direction, PlayStation just pivoted a little bit and stole the whole generation from them. It wasn't even close. It's so fascinating to watch as the conversation surrounding Phil and his leadership team has changed, because when you look at the Xbox One era with Don Matrick, that was the death of Xbox, well and truly. But then Phil stepped in with Game Pass, and we saw a vision with some of these newly purchased studios that this was going to be an era mixed with exclusives and good value and services, and this was a vision to believe in for Xbox. And it's so funny to be at this point in the generation where people are calling it Xbox's worst generation yet, worse than Xbox One, and that Phil's team may be responsible for just straight up killing the brand in general. And again, it's just sad because it's like I'm watching an old animal kind of wither and fade away, and you just feel sad about it. I don't want Xbox to go anywhere. It was my first real home console right next to my N64. I have so many memories with this brand, but they are not just marching, but stampeding in a completely different direction right now. And while they have a lot of exciting games, and I'm not gonna have tunnel vision and be a prisoner of the moment, they have a lot of exciting games. I don't think even the most diehard of fans can sit here and deny what's going on, which is they are going more multi-plat than ever before. It's not just like a quick 4-time thing with these little games like Pentiment or whatever. They want the big games to go over there. And it was leaked before Opening Night Live ever hit that there was gonna be a big game from Xbox being ported over to PlayStation. Honestly, my guess was either Forza when it started to leak, but when that was starting to get debunked, I thought it might be Starfield because, you know, you had the new expansion hitting, but Indie, before it even has a chance to release, I mean, all it's just communicating to people is the same thing that's gonna be for all other Xbox exclusives. No one's gonna look at Avowed and go, I'm gonna go buy an Xbox for that. Why is that? Because it's eventually gonna go to PlayStation. That's the mindset. Even if what I'm saying is not true, that's the mindset. That's the problem that Xbox is going to face. All of these games are now gonna be subject to that. Fable, South of Midnight, Clockwork Revolution, the list goes on. These games are just gonna be looked at and go, well, it'll come to PlayStation at some point, so I don't need to buy an Xbox for it. And people will happily skip these games. Why will they also skip them even if they look damn good? It's because of time. There are more games releasing than ever. And so when people can happily skip something and not worry about it, and maybe they get to experience that later, it's kind of ignorance is bliss. I could be playing absolute peak fiction in the newest Fable game. It doesn't matter. People have already moved on. They're spending their time elsewhere. And if it comes to PlayStation, then great. If it doesn't, they're not buying an Xbox for it. That's where Game Pass steps in. We'll see how much of an impact it has. I think Call of Duty could really shake things up in a positive way, but there's no denying that Xbox is in the stickiest situation I think they've really ever been in, because the reality is, like, Xbox One was the death of Xbox in one way, which was it completely going away. This is a different type of potential death of Xbox and how they conduct business. And so what it's gonna take is, I think, a very remarkable comeback to restore what they once were to many people. And by that, I mean something like the Nintendo Switch, like something that you look at and go, oh my God, yes, And I hear those rumors like many of you do about an Xbox handheld, and I think that as a companion piece to a very powerful console that actually does some things different and launches ahead of a PlayStation 6, kind of like the 360 did before the PS3, would be a pretty good, if you will, quote, final home run swing. I put it in quotes because many people have asserted this as the death of Xbox, like they're just gonna fade out of the industry. They're making more money than ever. They're not going anywhere. They're here for the long haul. It's just in what capacity are they operating in? And I love the Xbox that operates as a console manufacturer. I love how they can push the limits. I think it's important PlayStation and Nintendo have as much competition as possible in this space. I don't want Apple stepping in and filling the void as another console manufacturer, or Amazon even. Like, they don't get games like these big three do in their own unique way. So I think it's important to have a healthy Xbox in this industry, and they are healthy, but in a way that's very foreign to all of us and makes them kind of more in line with like a Ubisoft, if you will, than a manufacturer of systems. And maybe I would say, if anything, and I've said this multiple times, they're becoming more like Valve. And that's not really the worst thing to model yourselves after. We'll see if they start to break down barriers where like Xbox can host all these other storefronts, because that's another thing that could really turn things around. If my Xbox device becomes an all-encompassing console, kind of like they've talked about in the past, like a PC in my living room where I can have Epic Game Store, Steam, I can access my Xbox games, who knows what else, that would go a really long way with me. It would change what Xbox is to me, but that would also go a long way with being able to take certain systems on the go. So we'll see where things end up, but I just wanted to talk about this kind of sad state Xbox has found themselves in. They're really exciting to talk about because they're putting out, I think, some exciting video games. I love their portfolio. It's just the way it's being applied, the way it's being marketed. Like, it's a shame that Indiana Jones and all the buzz it's gonna get now is how it's the PS5 game before it even released exclusively on Xbox. That is a little bit of a bummer, and Xbox, I think, has themselves to blame for that, because it just creates a conversation around the game that doesn't need to be made at all until the time is right, which was, I think, after the release on Xbox. So I leave it in your hands, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna go catch some sleep now. I've been running on like a few hours of sleep, so yeah, I'm gonna grab my Steam Deck. I'm playing Space Marines right now, so I'm gonna cozy up in bed and drift off into La La Land. But you'll probably get this video at like some point during the day or whatever, so it'll be irrelevant to you at that point. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for bearing with me. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.